March 8, 2014. It was supposed to be just another overnight flight. 239 people boarded a modern passenger jet, expecting to wake up in another country. Some were returning home. Some were traveling for business. Others were beginning a new chapter in their lives. None of them knew they were about to become part of one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, one of the safest and most reliable airliners ever built. The route was routine. The weather was calm. The crew was highly experienced. Nothing seemed unusual, but less than an hour after takeoff, the airplane simply disappeared. No distress call, no emergency signal, no confirmed wreckage, no explanation. More than a decade later, despite one of the largest and most expensive search operations ever conducted, no one knows exactly what happened aboard Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. How can a passenger jet carrying 239 people vanish in an age of satellites, radar, and global communication? This is the story of the flight that challenged everything we thought we knew about modern aviation. On the evening of March 7, 2014, passengers began arriving at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. Their destination was Beijing, China. The journey would normally take just under 6 hours. Nothing about Flight MH370 stood out. It was an ordinary scheduled international service operated by Malaysia Airlines. The aircraft assigned to the flight was a Boeing 777-200ER, registered as 9M Embro. It had flown safely for more than a decade and had an excellent maintenance record. Piloting the aircraft was Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran with over 18,000 hours of flying experience. Alongside him was First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, who was completing the final stages of his training on the Boeing 777. Together with 10 cabin crew members, they welcomed 227 passengers from multiple countries. Among them were families, business travelers, students, vacationers, and children. To everyone on board, this was simply another flight. At 12:41 a.m. local time, Flight MH370 pushed back from the gate. The twin engines roared to life. Moments later, the aircraft accelerated down the runway. Within seconds, it was airborne. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Air traffic controllers guided the aircraft northeast toward its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The weather was favorable. There were no reports of turbulence, no signs of mechanical problems, no emergency messages. Inside the cabin, many passengers likely settled into their seats, watched movies, or tried to get some sleep. For nearly 40 minutes, the flight progressed exactly as planned. Then came what would become one of the most analyzed sentences in aviation history. As Flight MH370 approached the point where responsibility for air traffic control would pass from Malaysia to Vietnam, controllers instructed the crew to contact the next control center. This handoff was routine. It happened thousands of times every day around the world. Captain Zahari, or possibly the first officer, responded with a calm, professional transmission. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those would be the last confirmed words ever heard from the aircraft. There was nothing unusual in the voice. No hint of distress. No urgency. No indication that anything was wrong. Just a routine acknowledgement. Moments later, the aircraft's transponder, the device that broadcasts an aircraft's identity and altitude to civilian radar, stopped transmitting. Almost simultaneously, the aircraft disappeared from civilian radar screens. At first, nobody panicked. Controllers assumed there had been a technical issue or a communication delay. They expected the aircraft to check in with Vietnamese air traffic control within minutes. It never did. Minutes passed, then more. Vietnamese controllers waited for Flight MH370 to make contact. Nothing. They called repeatedly. Silence. Malaysia was asked if they had heard from the aircraft. They hadn't. As the minutes turned into nearly an hour, a growing sense of concern spread through the control centers. Commercial airliners don't simply disappear. Even if radio communication fails, multiple backup systems usually allow aircraft to be tracked. Yet MH370 seemed to have vanished without leaving a clear trail. At that moment, no one knew that the mystery was only beginning. Because while civilian radar had lost the aircraft, another system had seen something entirely unexpected. As dawn broke over Southeast Asia, officials believed Flight MH370 had simply vanished somewhere between Malaysia and Vietnam. But hidden inside the records of Malaysia's military radar was a discovery that changed everything. The aircraft hadn't disappeared. It had turned around. Military radar operators later determined that shortly after the aircraft's transponder stopped transmitting, the plane made a dramatic left turn. Not a gentle correction, a deliberate change of course. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, MH370 crossed back over the Malaysian peninsula. Then it flew northwest. For investigators, this raised an immediate question. If the aircraft had suffered a sudden catastrophic failure, how had it managed to execute such a controlled maneuver? Modern passenger jets don't perform complex turns on their own. Someone, or something, had changed the aircraft's course. The mystery had just become far more complicated. For the next several hours, MH370 continued flying. But there was something deeply unusual about this flight. No radio calls, no emergency messages, no transponder. To civilian air traffic controllers, it was effectively invisible. Yet the aircraft itself was still in the air. The Boeing 777 is equipped with multiple communication systems. While the transponder had stopped transmitting, another system quietly continued exchanging brief automated signals with a satellite network. These weren't distress messages. They weren't voice communications. They were simple electronic handshakes, routine pings confirming that the aircraft was still powered on. At the time, no one realized how important those tiny signals would become. As MH370 failed to arrive in Beijing, concern turned into alarm. Malaysia Airlines confirmed that contact with the aircraft had been lost. Families gathered at airports, desperately waiting for information. Many believed there had been an emergency landing somewhere. Others hoped the aircraft had simply lost communications. Hours turned into days. Search teams from multiple countries rushed to the Gulf of Thailand, where the aircraft was originally believed to have disappeared. Ships searched the sea. Helicopters scanned the coastline. Aircraft flew repeated search patterns. Every floating object became a possible clue. Oil slicks, wood, metal fragments. Each discovery sparked hope, and almost every one turned out to be unrelated. The ocean was giving investigators nothing. Then came the military radar data. Suddenly, investigators realized they had been searching in the wrong place. MH370 hadn't continued toward Vietnam. It had reversed course. That single revelation forced search teams to rethink everything. The operation expanded dramatically. The possible search area grew from hundreds of square kilometers to hundreds of thousands. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Why had the aircraft turned back? Was the crew trying to reach another airport? Had someone taken control of the plane? Was there an onboard emergency that left the pilots unable to communicate? Every possibility was considered. None could yet explain the evidence. Then investigators received information from an unexpected source. A British satellite communications company had recorded a series of automated connections between its satellite and MH370. The aircraft had continued responding long after it vanished from radar. Not with words, not with distress calls, just brief electronic acknowledgments. 7 in total. Each one confirmed a simple but astonishing fact. MH370 was still flying, hour after hour, long after the world believed it had disappeared. Using these signals, engineers began calculating where the aircraft could have been. The results were both groundbreaking and deeply unsettling. Instead of a precise location, the calculations produced 2 enormous arcs across the globe. One stretched north toward Central Asia. The other curved deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean. One of those arcs almost certainly held the final resting place of Flight MH370. But which one? The southern Indian Ocean is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Its waters are cold. Its weather is unpredictable. Its waves can rise several stories high. If MH370 had ended its journey there, finding it would be like searching for a single suitcase on the floor of an ocean larger than many countries. And yet, that was exactly the task investigators now faced. The biggest aviation search in history was only just beginning. At first, the satellite data seemed almost useless. Unlike GPS, the satellite wasn't tracking MH370's exact position. It only knew that, once every hour, the aircraft had exchanged a brief automated signal, a simple electronic handshake confirming it was still powered and communicating. No coordinates, no altitude, no heading, just a silent, "I'm still here." To most people, those tiny signals meant very little. But to a team of engineers and mathematicians, they became the most important clues in the entire investigation. By studying the time it took each signal to travel between the aircraft and the satellite, investigators could estimate the aircraft's distance from the satellite at each handshake. The result wasn't a pinpoint location. Instead, each handshake placed the aircraft somewhere along a giant arc stretching across the Earth. 7 handshakes, 7 arcs. Together, they formed a rough picture of the aircraft's final journey. But there was still one problem. The data showed where the aircraft could have been. It didn't reveal which direction it had been flying. Investigators now faced 2 possible scenarios. The northern route stretched across parts of Central Asia. The southern route disappeared into one of the most remote regions on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean. Both matched the satellite data. Both seemed possible, but only one could be correct. To solve the puzzle, engineers examined something almost impossible to notice: a tiny shift in the radio frequency of the satellite signals. This phenomenon, known as the Doppler effect, is the same principle that causes the sound of a passing ambulance siren to change as it moves toward you and then away. Applied to MH370 satellite signals, it revealed something remarkable. The aircraft wasn't flying north. It was moving south, far south, toward an ocean so vast that even modern technology would struggle to search it. The southern Indian Ocean is unlike almost anywhere else on the planet. There are few shipping routes, few islands, few aircraft pass overhead. It is cold, violent, and incredibly deep. Some parts of the ocean floor lie more than 6,000 meters below the surface. If MH370 had crashed there, finding it would be extraordinarily difficult. Still, the search began. Countries from around the world joined the effort. Ships carrying advanced sonar equipment crossed thousands of kilometers of open water. Military aircraft scanned the surface day after day. Specialized underwater vehicles mapped the seabed in extraordinary detail. It quickly became the largest and most expensive search operation in aviation history. Yet despite months of searching, there was nothing. No life rafts, no floating luggage, no fuel slick large enough to explain the disappearance. No main wreckage, only the endless ocean. As weeks turned into months, hope slowly gave way to heartbreak. Families continued waiting for news. Many refused to believe their loved ones were gone. Some expected a phone call. Others believed the aircraft would somehow be found intact. Around the world, millions followed every new development. Every satellite image, every rumor, every unidentified object spotted from the air. Each potential clue sparked headlines. Each one eventually led nowhere. The mystery was becoming more frustrating with every passing day. Investigators had one of the most advanced aircraft ever built. A rough idea of where it had gone. Thousands of people searching. And yet, the airplane remained missing. Then, more than a year after MH370 disappeared, a man walking along a beach on Réunion Island, a French territory in the western Indian Ocean, noticed something unusual. Lying among the rocks was a large piece of aircraft debris. It was badly weathered, covered in barnacles, and had clearly spent a long time drifting at sea. Investigators quickly recovered the object. Experts examined every detail: the shape, the serial markings, the construction. After careful analysis, they reached an extraordinary conclusion. The fragment, known as a flaperon, a movable part of an aircraft's wing, was confirmed to have come from Flight MH370. For the first time, There was undeniable physical evidence that the aircraft had ended its journey in the Indian Ocean. The discovery validated years of satellite analysis, but it also revealed something deeply unsettling. If a single wing component could drift ashore after more than a year, where was the rest of the aircraft? The flapper found on Réunion Island was only the beginning. Over the next several years, more pieces of aircraft debris would be discovered along the coastlines of islands and countries bordering the western Indian Ocean. Fragments were found in Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, Mauritius, and Madagascar. Some pieces were positively identified as belonging to MH370. Others were considered highly likely matches. Oceanographers studied winds, currents, and drifting patterns. Their conclusions pointed in the same direction. The aircraft had almost certainly entered the southern Indian Ocean. But the discoveries raised another question. If debris could travel thousands of kilometers, why hadn't anyone found the main wreckage? The answer lay beneath the surface. The southern Indian Ocean is unimaginably vast. Its floor is covered with mountains, volcanic ridges, deep trenches, and underwater cliffs. An aircraft resting there could remain hidden for decades, perhaps even longer. Before exploring the theories, it's important to separate fact from speculation. Investigators are confident about several key points. MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur normally. Its transponder stopped transmitting shortly after the final radio call. Military radar showed the aircraft turned back across the Malay Peninsula. Satellite data indicated it continued flying for several more hours. Confirmed debris linked the aircraft to the southern Indian Ocean. These facts are supported by official investigations and physical evidence. Everything beyond them becomes far less certain. One of the leading possibilities considered by investigators was that someone intentionally changed the aircraft's course. The deliberate turn, the loss of the transponder, and the long flight afterward suggested that the aircraft remained under control for some time. But if that happened, who was responsible? Was it someone in the cockpit? Could another person have gained access? The official investigation did not reach a definitive conclusion. Investigators examined the captain's background, the first officer's history, crew records, and passenger information. No single piece of evidence conclusively proved deliberate action by any individual. As a result, the investigation stopped short of assigning blame. Another possibility was a catastrophic onboard emergency. Some experts suggested a loss of cabin pressure, known as depressurization. If the crew failed to receive enough oxygen, they could gradually lose consciousness. This condition, called hypoxia, has contributed to previous aviation accidents. Under this theory, the aircraft may have continued flying on autopilot after everyone on board became incapacitated. Eventually, it would have run out of fuel, then descended into the ocean. This explanation fits some of the available evidence, but it doesn't fully explain the aircraft's earlier change of direction. That remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. Whenever a mystery captures the world's attention, extraordinary stories often follow. MH370 was no exception. Some claim the aircraft had been hijacked and secretly landed. Others suggested foreign military involvement. There were even theories involving extraterrestrials. These ideas spread rapidly across the internet, but investigators found no credible evidence supporting them. The official investigation focused instead on physical evidence, radar records, satellite data, recovered debris, and engineering analysis. In a mystery this significant, evidence matters far more than speculation. Even without knowing exactly what happened to MH370, its disappearance transformed aviation. Airlines and regulators introduced improvements to aircraft tracking. New technologies were developed to make it harder for commercial aircraft to disappear without leaving a digital trail. International organizations strengthened standards for reporting an aircraft's position during flight. The tragedy became a turning point, not because the mystery had been solved, but because the world realized it should never happen again. In January 2017, after searching more than 120,000 square kilometers of the southern Indian Ocean, the multinational search for MH370 was officially suspended. It was a difficult decision, despite years of effort. The aircraft had not been found. For the families of the 239 people on board, there was no final goodbye, no complete explanation, only silence. Yet for many investigators, the search was never truly over. Private companies later proposed new expeditions using more advanced technology, improved underwater drones, higher resolution sonar, and more sophisticated ocean current models offered renewed hope. Years after the disappearance, additional search efforts were launched in carefully selected areas based on updated analyses. Each mission carried the same hope, that somewhere beneath the waves, the aircraft was still waiting to be found. The ocean has a remarkable ability to preserve secrets. Large shipwrecks have remained hidden for decades. Some were discovered only after entirely new technologies became available. MH370 may be no different. Many experts believe the aircraft can still be found. The challenge isn't whether it exists. It's knowing where to look. The southern Indian Ocean is one of the least explored places on Earth. Strong currents, extreme weather, and enormous depths make every search incredibly difficult. But history has shown that persistence often leads to discovery. The question is not simply if MH370 will be found. It's when. When people talk about MH370, they often focus on the aircraft, the radar, the satellite data, the theories. But behind every technical detail were real people, 239 lives. Parents, children, students, engineers, flight attendants, pilots, friends. Each passenger boarded that aircraft believing they would arrive in Beijing a few hours later. Instead, their families were left waiting for answers that have never fully come. For them, MH370 is not just history. It is an unfinished chapter. The disappearance of MH370 changed aviation forever. Airlines improved aircraft tracking. International organizations strengthened standards for monitoring flights over oceans. New technologies continue to reduce the chances that a commercial aircraft could disappear without leaving a clear trail. Those changes cannot undo what happened, but they may help prevent a similar tragedy in the future. Sometimes, the greatest lessons are written in the most painful chapters of history. More than a decade has passed since Flight MH370 disappeared. Investigators have reconstructed much of its journey. They know it changed course. They know it flew for hours after its last radio transmission. They know it almost certainly ended in the southern Indian Ocean. But one crucial question remains unanswered. Why? Why did the aircraft leave its planned route? What happened inside the cockpit? What were the final moments of the passengers and crew? Until the main wreckage, and perhaps the flight recorders, are found, those answers may remain out of reach. MH370 reminds us that even in an age of satellites, global communication, and advanced technology, some mysteries still endure. Not because people stopped looking, but because the world is far larger and far deeper than we sometimes imagine. Somewhere beneath the waves of the Indian Ocean, a story is still waiting to be told.